What is up, everybody? I'm Christian Dyer, the host of The Chase, and today's special guest is just an absolutely remarkable woman by the name of Jennifer Drummond, who is in pursuit of becoming the world's first female to conquer all second seven summits. Jennifer, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
Oh, no, I'm so grateful you're here. Just to start, is it Jen or Jennifer? What do you prefer?
Jennifer, if I'm getting yelled at, Jennifer having fun.
Oh my gosh, like when I call my mom Nancy if I really need her attention.
There you go. I get it.
All
That's
right.
awesome.
So you're in Park City right now. What's happening in your life?
Yeah. So currently, I am training to head to Mount Logan, which is the second highest point in North America, which
Okay.
will be my seventh summit. Woohoo! I started this quest a few years back, and it has been a rodeo to say the least.
So 7 of 7, you're going to be done.
Yes, I'm almost done. I'm so close. I can taste it.
And is this your first attempt going up Logan?
Unfortunately not. We went to Logan last year in May
Mm,
and had some complications. Weather is a huge factor in these big mountain expeditions. What happened was one of our guides had gotten sick, and then the airplane that takes people on and off the glacier, there's one airplane that does this, had an engine failure. So
oh,
then all the people on the glacier fell under Parks Canada. So Parks Canada had to watch us, and they have helicopters that could get us if something was wrong. And there was a whole bunch of bad weather coming in for the next couple weeks. And so they were worried that helicopters wouldn't be able to land, we wouldn't be able to melt water, all the things. So it was determined that the safest plan was to come back another year when there was more resources if something went wrong and maybe a better weather window to continue the pursuit.
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And so you're climbing Logan when? What like or the projected
Yeah.
date?
So the plan is to leave May 15th. There's a team of 7 of us that are going just because when you climb Logan, you have to carry all of your stuff. So we get
Jeez.
dropped off on the glacier with sleds and backpacks and food and fuel and tents and all the things. And we carry that up the mountain, right? So like you land, you set up a tent, and then you cut out ice blocks to make an igloo so that it protects it from the wind. And then the next day, you'll go maybe a few kilometers because you're going up altitude too. So you have to be careful and you have to test the ground. So none of this ground, there's no trail. So you are literally taking a ski pole and going to the left of you, to the center of you, and to the right of you. And if that ski pole doesn't go too deep, you're like, okay, this is safe to cross. So then you take one step and then you do that again. You take a second step. And so you'll carry some of your gear, you'll bury it in the snow, you'll go back to your tent to sleep. The next day, you'll pack up your tent, you go past where you buried everything, you'll set your tent down, you'll build a new igloo to protect it, you sleep, then you go back and get your stuff, you bring it to your tent, and like you just inchworm forward and backwards up this mountain, hopefully staying in a weather window that allows you to summit.
Okay. Then how many days should that take versus how many days would it take if you were just going to go straight up?
I mean, if you physically could just go straight up,
Yeah.
um, I mean, if you were super speedy and like the world all aligned, it's about a 30 kilometer deal.
Okay.
You do it on skis. I don't know if you could really, we take about 3 weeks. I don't think it's going to be able to be done much faster just because you have to acclimate, right? And you have to heat food up and you have to boil water and you have to just keep moving your stuff up the mountain. There's no life there.
Jeez. Wow.
It's just blue ice.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
and we'll get so
crazy.
much more into that later on. But before, I want to tell you how unique your chase is and your story is. Everybody on the show that I've had are, the athletes of the normal sports, the NFL, the NBA, Olympic swimmers, and what have it. And the only one that is a little untraditional, I had Jerome Avery, who is a Paralympic guide runner, and so that
Oh
opened
wow.
my eyes to maybe an unconventional story. And now to have someone like you on, who's conquering these huge feats on mountains, is pretty cool. And I'm excited to dive really, really into it and hear the why behind it all, the how, and more importantly, number one, how are you getting fulfillment from this? And number two, the day to day conversations that you're having with yourself to keep pushing, especially when you're having to only move X amount of meters per day. It's such like a day by day process.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it takes a special kind of crazy for sure.
Yeah.
And it's interesting environment because it's life or death,
Mm.
right? So it's a different level of commitment when if I not to say like basketball games and football games and all that kind of stuff, but you can lose a game and you can go play the game again, right? I am in a mountain environment that is not tried, tested, and true. We're testing it and making sure it's safe as we go. We're making decisions every single day based on what the weather's doing, the wind's doing, what's coming up, what's going against us. And if we make wrong decisions, we could risk our lives.
Yep.
So it's very easy to wake up every morning saying, I have to train because I have to put myself in the best position possible to
100%.
succeed, not only for myself, but for everybody else that's with me.
Absolutely. And I bet it adds even more, not pressure, but clarity when you're a mother.
Yes. Yes.
It's
Yes.
you got
Yeah.
people relying on you.
I have people rely on me, and like I did not summit a few of these mountains the first time. I didn't summit K2 the first time. I didn't summit Mount Logan the first time, and that's okay because my big goal is to be alive,
Yeah.
right, and to make the most out of life. And so, if at any point I feel that's getting too risky to make that pursuit happen, the mountain's always there. So step away, come back home, recharge, and then go back with more knowledge and hopefully success the second time.
That's remarkable. Let's take a step back. I kind of want to understand like young Jen,
Yeah.
because I know you're an athlete, so that obviously influences who you are today, your mindset, more so just like how mentally tough you are. That especially what you're trying to do requires. But what was childhood like, and kind of shape who you are today?
Yeah. Okay. So, being a child at my household, sports were always a thing. And if you were on a sporting team or had sport practices, you didn't have to do other chores at the house. And if
Nice.
I had to pick between gymnastics or soccer and doing dishes, I'm doing gymnastics or soccer
Every
all day
time.
long, every day. Right. So, I kind of learned quick that you get to pick your struggle, and I chose my struggle to be in the sporting arenas more so than in the household type activities. And I still do that today. So,
And so then you went to SMU, played 4 years, and then from SMU, I guess up until the moment you decided you want to climb, what was your life like?
yeah. Okay, let's back up a little bit. I played soccer. My goal is to play D1 because that's everybody's goal when you're
Yeah.
younger. I went to SMU, played like to play, and I just once it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Like I didn't realize that so many of the players there, their goal was to be professional. And at that time, I'm like, I don't want to be a professional soccer player because they don't make any money and I'm expensive. So I actually stepped out of soccer before I was done with college just because I knew it wasn't going to lead me to the path that I desired long term. Um, and got into finance and started a family and then decided that sports I needed in my life just because
Mm.
that's my release, that's my balance, that's my sanity. Got into triathlon for a while
Okay.
for the I don't know, it's just fun. It's a great way to meet people. Triathlon communities are really strong. I moved out to Park City, and that's when I started triathlons just because, again, it was an easy way to meet people and stay in shape. And then I got into a car accident.
Mm.
I don't know. Yeah, in 2018. And that car accident should have taken my life and didn't. No one
Jesus.
knows how it didn't. You look at the car, you look at the accident, and I'm still just like, well, how am I here? Like, why am I here? And when you have those experiences of like, why was I saved? I mean, literally a couple weeks after my accident, no way should I have lived. I have a girlfriend that was trail running that slipped, hit her head on a rock randomly on a trail that you could push a stroller, and she died instantly.
Jeez.
And so you just sit there and you're like, why her? Why not me? What's going on? And I really sat in reflection for a while thinking, okay, I don't get to choose when I leave this planet, but I sure get to choose how I show up.
Mm.
And where am I most alive? Like what do I want my story to mean? What do I want my obituary to say? And I'd been in investments before, so I started breaking my life up into decades. I said, okay, what do I want to do in my 40s that I can't do in my 80s? Or what do I want to do now that I can't do later? And when I was turning 40 in 2020. And so I had asked a friend, I'm like, hey, if there's one mountain you could climb in the world, what mountain would that be? And my friend who's big into mountaineering said there's a beautiful mountain in Nepal called Ama de Blanc. It's amazing. It's the Paramount Picture logo. You should go check it out. Da 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 da. And so I'm like, okay, for my 40th, I'm going to climb this mountain. Well, fast forward into March of 2020, and we have COVID happen. And all of a sudden, I'm homeschooling kids, and it doesn't look like I'm going to be going anywhere. And during the homeschooling session, one of my sons was complaining about his math homework. And I'm like, listen, we do hard things. You got this. And he looks at me and he goes, if we do hard things, why are you climbing a mountain called I'm a Dumb Blonde instead of a real mountain like Everest?
No way.
I'm like, buddy, get your math homework done. So
Jeez.
then I know,
You're
harsh,
raising a ruthless kid here. I love his
ruthless.
attitude.
Yes. And I'm like, you know what, do your math homework. We'll look at Everest. And I looked at Everest. And honestly, I don't even know why it never like really called me or why I didn't do it. But then I was thinking, I'm like, you know, maybe I should climb Everest because the perception of Everest is really big to my kids, and I want them to show them that they're capable of everything. Even though Ama de Blam's a more technical mountain than Everest, people know Everest.
Yep.
So I called the coach and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing this," and he's like, "You can totally be ready, 100%." Um, and so then I was training for Everest. I went to the kids' school. I said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to be gone for like 4 to 6 weeks potentially." Um, my kids have never been away from me that long. Grandma's coming. We have a live-in nanny. I just want you guys to know so that maybe you have a little bit more empathy or sympathy or whatever with my kids when I'm gone. And the lady at the school was like, wow, you're doing this awesome thing. Why don't we get the school involved and have all the kids set what their Everest goal is? And you come in and teach us about goal setting and what that takes and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, fantastic. So we did this huge, like, all the little kids had hikers in the hallway and they wrote what their goal was. And I did this huge campaign on goal setting. And then when I was at Everest, I could do some phone calls from base camp and check in on the classrooms, and the kids would ask questions. And so all of a sudden, my kids like thought it was the coolest thing ever that their mom was climbing Mount Everest
Mm.
because the community involvement, their friends are all asked, like, your mom's the one climbing Everest? I talked to her in our classroom the other day. And it turned in this like huge happy thing. And I had overheard this little girl asking my daughter, like, are you going to climb Everest someday? She's like, if I want to, I will. And I just love that like personality that I saw. And my coach had given me this book to read, and it was about, in the front of it, there was a little story about a lady who got a Guinness World Record. And I was talking to my coach, I was half joking. I'm like, listen, if I got a Guinness World Record, my kids would think I'm cool. We
Heck
learned how to
yes.
read
Superwoman.
on Guinness World Record, right? Like, I'm like, but I'm not eating hot dogs or growing pumpkins. Like, it's just, that's not my thing. And he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then he came back and he's like, hey, I have this great pursuit for you. There's never been a female that's done the 7-second summits, which are the second highest point on each continent, harder than the first 7. And he goes, you love to travel. You have 7 children. There's 7 continents. I think it's like right up your alley. And so I'm like, let's try it. And I did. And it's just been this journey of amazement and awe and humbling because the things that you get to see or be a part of or enjoy are because I said yes to this one big thing, and everything else that's come out of it is just like, is this real life? Real life, really?
Yes.
This is amazing.
Pretty funny how moments like that in your life can just change everything. And
Everything.
what I thought about when you just said that, which draws so many parallels to my life and from everything I've experienced, is so many people, because they know Everest, like, we're always chasing the big known thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whether it's money, whether it's fame, whether it's a title and whatnot. But that doesn't take anything away from the journey. And
Right.
from what I've learned is that's the most important piece, whether people notice it or don't notice it. It's not just the end goal.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Like, this is what was shocking to me. When we got to the top of Everest, I was on the top of Everest for 5 minutes.
Oh,
Okay, 5 minutes.
yeah.
And then the weather was crazy. We had to go down. They're worried about oxygen freezing and all these things. And you sit there and you think, if I climb this whole mountain for the top, I just missed all the magic that happened during the whole process. Because if you don't enjoy the process or the struggle or all the little pieces that go with it, like that 5 minutes, I don't know if it's worth it.
Heck no. And I just listened to a talk the other day by a rugby player from Australia who I've looked up to my whole life, and he broke it down into training sessions versus how many games he plays a year. And so maybe for your life, it's how many times are you training and how many mountains are you climbing or how many days you're actually climbing the mountain. And he goes, I'm playing probably between 24 and 30 games a year. He said, I'm training 300 and something days a year, right? So my focus, my energy, my intent needs to be on my training and my day-to-day life, not just on those games. And too many
Right.
people focus on that one day or that one moment, the outcome, when in reality, like it's the day-to-day stuff that makes, the biggest impact.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You better like that day-to-day stuff. That's kinda why I got out of triathlon. I'm like, I like running, I like biking. I hated swimming. I
Mm,
just hated
mm,
it. I'm like, "Why am I spending this much time doing something that I don't even enjoy when there's 1,000 other things that I like to do?" And it's just taking that moment to give yourself permission to be like, "I don't even like this. Let's do something different."
100%. Okay, how long did you train and prepare for Everest?
Everest, I decided I was going to climb in July of 2020 and summited May 31st of 2021.
Wow,
So it was about 9 months.
9 months. And
Yeah. But
was
I
it what?
came from a lot of fitness, right? Like
Yeah.
I came from like a strong fitness background.
Was it what you expected?
I don't think it's ever what you expected,
Mm,
right? Um, I thought it was going to be harder than what it was just because of the stories and the magnitude and all the things, but have a saying that Everest is 70% mental and 30% physical. And I think that applies to a lot of life when we really start to think about it.
wow. Okay, so yeah, keep going on that. What was the hardest part mentally about that climb?
Um, it was a weird year to climb Everest. In 2021, the percentage of summits were pretty low
Mm,
because you had COVID that we were still kind of contending with. We had these weird storms that came in um, to the mountain. There was a point where our team was on Camp 2. So you have Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, Camp 4, Summit. And at Camp 2, the weather report had come in saying like, "Oh, we're gonna have a little bit of snow and blah 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 blah." Well, we ended up getting maybe 18 to 24 inches of snow. And here's what happens: like the ropes that you use to climb then get buried,
mm,
and then the sun, like it's fine if it's cloudy out because the snow doesn't set. So
okay.
then you can pull the ropes up and it's all like light, fluffy snow. But what happens on Everest once it gets a blue sky day is there's sun reflecting off of all these white peaks, and you almost get this top layer that becomes ice. Well, now all of a sudden the ropes are buried and you're not going to be able to get them out from underneath that ice. And so then there was going to be no way that we were going to summit. And we're like, there was reports coming in from Nepal saying that everybody had to get off the mountain. It wasn't safe to continue, blah, 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 blah. I was climbing with Nims. And he was like, we're climbing, we're here, we know what we're up against. So we flew drones in front of us to see, okay, is it really possible? Can we time this all together? And finally made the decision to move up the mountain. We got to Camp 3, and then probably about 7 or 8 hours later, we got message that all that snow caused an avalanche and buried our Camp 2. And that was like a moment in time where it was so close
Mm.
to like comfort that you just like that was in your mind like, oh my god, if we would have stayed there, we would have been in an avalanche. Thank
Were there
God we
anybody?
continued.
Was there anybody at camp or no?
There was the chefs at camp, and no one died,
Okay.
but everything got destroyed. Like,
Yeah.
it was crazy. When we came back down from our summit, we couldn't stop. Like, we just went down. Like, there was no Camp 2 to stay at.
So every step on these pursuits, it's a calculated risk.
It is. It's a calculated risk, and Mother Nature wins like
Yeah.
99% of the time. So it's just always being, it's a chess game, right? Like,
Mm.
you make a move, then nature makes a move, and you have to reevaluate. Okay, is it still okay to go? You make a move, nature makes a move, and it's continuous.
What's the scariest moment or experience you've had climbing?
Um, it's always the stuff that just has you have no control over. So when we were on K2, my first attempt, I was up on the mountain. I was doing fine, and there was other people on our team that were trying to set a new route, and they got caught in an avalanche. One person broke his leg, one person died, and the other
Mm.
person was stuck on the mountain for the day, waiting for the snow to settle a little bit more so that if a helicopter came in to rescue, the sounds of the helicopter wouldn't trigger another avalanche. And so just being, again, you're just like so close to these moments, but they're not your moment, right? Just it brings back just crazy memories and just intensity at a different level.
Sounds to me like you're a little adrenaline junkie.
Maybe. I don't know. The funny thing is like I've been like steps away from it or levels away from it that it's just been far enough to be close but not touch me. So
Have
who
you always
knows?
had this like tenacity for life and appreciation for life, or was that car accident the pivot?
The car accident was the pivot because I definitely was that person that was an if then person. I'm going to make this amount of money and then I'm going to be happier. I'm going
Mm.
to have this house or I'm going to have this success or this is what it's going to look like. And not until it looks like that is life going to be enjoyable. When that car crash happened, all of those external views, like I didn't even care anymore. At that point, it was like, where do I feel most alive? Where do I feel most in service to others? Where am I filling myself up so that I can help fill up other people? And that car accident really just brought me back home to me and let the noise of the world fade away.
Oh, that's beautiful. But I mean, on one hand, I'm so sorry you went through that, and I wish that upon no one.
Right.
On the other hand, I mean, the wealth of knowledge and experience and now appreciation for life that you have is like second to none. And I hope and I wish nobody has to go through something like that to perceive life the way that you do now. And so, is there anything you'd tell someone or give them some advice on how to, I guess, change or shift their mindset on life and not waiting for the if and thens?
Yeah, like I am chronically in this state of flipping the script, right? And I think that accident really helped me have this like anchor point to come back to of the worst thing that happened to me ended up being the best thing that happened to me.
Mm.
And it's just doing it in little everyday moments. For example, I have this light by my house. It is red all the time. And I used to get like so angry that I hit this red light. I'm like, oh my God, I hit the red light. I hit the red light 90% of the time. That's like how the timing of the light works. And then finally one day I'm sitting at the red light. I'm like, the red light's not mad that it's red. Only I'm mad that the light's
Yeah.
red. This is like getting ridiculous. So I turned the red light into a gratitude light. So every single time I hit the red light, I'm like, okay, what am I grateful for? What am I noticing that's going well? Like all those things to the point now where when I hit it green, I'm like, oh, bummer. I don't get it to my gratitude list.
So it's about reframing.
Yeah, it's just totally reframing or like when the accident first happened, I got a phone call from the principal's office because one of my kids was being one of my kids. And the principal's like, "Hey, this is what happened, blah 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 blah." And I was obviously too excited for the call. I'm like, "Thank you for calling me. This is amazing. I really appreciate it." And he's like, "This really wasn't the response I was expecting." I said to him, I almost died and I wouldn't have been here to receive this call.
Wow.
And while like I'm just so grateful that I'm here to take it and to witness my kid pushing a boundary too far that now he has to learn how to retract. I'd rather have them push those boundaries than always live within the lines.
Mm.
And like it's just all those little things that before I think I would have labeled as good or bad. Now I label it as okay. Like acceptance. Okay, this is what it is. Like what are we
Yeah.
doing? What's
You just
next?
roll with the punches.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. Okay, you have such a good head on your shoulder. A question I have is, how do you remain fulfillment driven, opposed to results driven in a world that's so much about the latter?
Yeah, well, you have to check in with yourself, right? I'll go back to this K2 example. I was like a little fury. Of course, this sounds so snotty, but it is what it is. I was furious at first that the whole incident happened with the avalanche and the person, all the injuries and the death and all that kind of stuff, because they were setting a new route that caused all of our expedition to be canceled and da 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 da. Yes, I feel horrible that it happened, all those things. But I'm like, I took all that time to train. I took all that money to get here. I took all that time away from my life to be able to do this. Now I have to come back. Like you have all these mixed emotions.
Mm.
And I said, no, my kids are watching. I need to remember that people are more important than peaks. And me going down and resetting and doing this again just shows them a way to navigate failure per se. And so I just have to live like there's lessons in this. Like there's always a lesson in failure. So I actually flew home to LA at first and I was still kind of like angry and just piecing together the whole story of what happened and I needed to get myself out of victim. So I
Mm.
called the nanny and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to take a day or two. My kids weren't expecting me home anyways to just like sort through this story and get through it all." And so I like put these huge like poster boards up in this hotel room and post-it notes and I started writing like everything that I hated about the expedition down to like the scratchy toilet paper, right? I mean like everything. And then you start looking at it, you're like, "Okay, well these are ridiculous things. These are legit things. How could we do this different? What can I do better? What was I in control of? What was I not in control of?" And, so I kind of was piecing the story together. It came time to go back to K2. Like, okay, there's a reason why I failed. I need to know the reason. I need to know the reason. And it wasn't until a couple weeks before I was leaving that I realized, you know what? It's about impossible for Pakistani people to climb their own mountain. It's too
Wow.
expensive. They don't have the resources. They don't have the equipment. They don't have all the things. I'm like, I failed because I realized that by being there the first time. So when I go back the second time, I'm going to sponsor a Pakistani climber to summit the mountain so that they can see their own people on top of their own peak.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, that was the reason why I failed. I could go back and make more possible. And I just feel these lessons show up in all different ways if you allow yourself to like process them, work through them, and then find a solution. And we all have that power, whether we're climbing mountains, building a business, creating a family, doing whatever every day.
Gee, so that's special. Why is it though that life just seems like you're actually living when you bring others with you?
Yes,
Growing
yes,
up, it was
yes.
always about, can I score the most points on my team? Probably can I be
Right.
the best on the team? It was always about those accolades. Now my perspective shifts a little bit, and I think it's I've matured. Um, I've torn my ACL when it would have been the peak of my athletic career, playing in the Pan American Games. I tore it 3 days before leaving,
Oh,
and then to get the sport stripped away from me, out of my control, number one, put me at a pretty low point in my life. But it also forced me to appreciate everything, number one, I have in life. And it made me realize that there's a lot more to life than a sport. And I give everything I have to it. So I'm not going to take anything away from it. But the moments and the journey and the experiences and the memories is what I'm going to cherish forever. And so the day to day process, it's just, and also like there's kids that messaged me about what I've done for them and how I've helped
yeah.
them in my career. And I think that's when I really realized, as much as it's about my journey, it's also about what I can do for someone else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It kind of reminds me of a story that I have. So I played soccer forever. And there was a time where I was playing in high school and I like wanted this goal to look a certain way.
Mm.
So I would miss a ton of goals because I kept trying to set it up to do the shot, set it up to do the shot. And finally, my coach pulled me aside and he's like, Drummond, listen, no one remembers what the goal looks like. They remember if you won the game or not.
Yep.
So forget about what the goal looks like and just win the game. And
Yep.
so then I was like, oh, yeah. So then I would start popping goals and we'd win games. And then, so then we made a rule that after we were ahead, I could try to set up the ideal goal. But until then, it was scores on the board first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just, I have to, like, I fall back on that story more often than not, being like, am I trying to set up the perfect goal instead of just winning the game?
I used to
Like, it's
chase
just silly.
perfection so much, but
Yes.
it also was so detrimental to me as a person because I think like how I performed on the field was influencing my happiness off the field. And that is a
Totally.
freaking tough terrain and tough slope to deal with.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Oh, I agree.
all right, so now that you're chasing something so passionately, what would you tell someone who feels stuck in their life, who almost just feels like they're just going through the motions?
Yeah, I like, as counterintuitive as this feels when you're stuck. I always feel like you're trying to push more or do more or figure out more. I really feel like it's the opposite, and you need to just stop
Mm,
and breathe and say, where am I finding joy? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And how do I lean into that and see what door opens? And I'll use an example for one of my kids. I have a little 10-year-old DJ, freaking love him. Um, he wanted to be a DJ. And so when it was his birthday, I was like calling all over town to try to get him a DJ lesson. No one wanted to give it to a 9-year-old at the time. Finally, I got this guy to do it. And this guy's like, I'll do one lesson for his birthday. I said, okay, perfect. They do one lesson. My son is like so energetic and enthusiastic and disciplined and excited about this thing that this coach is like, okay, I'm going to work with him. I've never met someone with so much passion.
mm,
And then Josh got to play, like, started mixing music. Then he started singing music. Then he started writing music. And now he's putting it all together. But he didn't know those next steps
yeah.
until he leaned into the first step of what he liked to do.
Yep.
And so I think doors open, but first we have to take that closest step to us, and then we'll see down a different hallway of different opportunities. But you can't always see where that leads with where you're standing. So the first step is just slow down and lean into what gets you excited, and then doors will open once you go through that first one.
Oh, that's great. And the first step, like you said, is so important. But I think, especially in today's like age, there's so many people with dreams or passions on the side that they do want to, they want to live, but they're pretty afraid of whether it's the public's perception or their parents, even their opinions or their friends' opinions. It's always worrying about what other people are going to say about it. And
Yeah.
and I hear that time and time and time again.
So here's one for you with that. We live in Park City, which is a ski town,
Yep.
right? So I'm my personality, my, like, who I am at the core is I'm riding up the chairlift and I'm thinking how I could do the turn better the next time, or where the better line is on the hill, and how I can be smoother, prettier, more graceful, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm riding this chairlift and I'm looking at these skiers going down. They're horrible. Like, most tourists are horrible skiers, but you could hear them giggling and laughing and, like, just having a good time. And it constantly reminds me, it's like, really? If I have the prettiest line down the hill, do I win? Or am I winning because I have the most fun going down the hill? Because I might look like an idiot to everybody else, but if I'm having the most fun, I kind of think I'm winning.
For
I'm the
sure. And
winner.
here's something is I think people notice less of how you do it or your style than what you're telling yourself that you're, yeah, it's so far from reality, but the voice in our head can become pretty amplified, at times.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I want to pivot a little bit about you as a climber now
Yeah.
versus your first climb, and how much of
Yeah.
a difference is there in your approach, your training, and just I guess the way you climb.
Yeah, it's so in the beginning, I think I was like so rigid and religious about my training, my eating, my plan, the
Mm.
everything that needed to be done. It was just robotic.
Yep.
And then as you get the experience, you kind of learn what rules you can break. You learn like for example, when I was training for Everest, my coach would say, "Okay, you're going to go hike for 6 hours." Well, in 6 hours, I could hike 18 miles.
Okay.
And I'm like, "Okay, I'm doing great." But the reality is that I was walking the trails, I should have been just walking up the faces of the mountains because I wasn't getting the vertical that I needed to train. And so it's you follow these things, but until you get in the arena and start playing, you have to like always refine the game. So you get in, you refine, you get in, you refine. So nowadays I have way more fun training
Mm.
because I know more of what's expected of me.
Sure.
So I'm more relaxed in the pursuit,
Sure.
right? Like there's not as much new, there's not as much off the wall. Like some of that's already now a part of me coming to the mountain every time. So now it's much more exciting and playful and relaxing than what it was in the beginning. And I think that's with all of our pursuits. We don't know how to break the rules or adjust them until we start getting into it.
But how do you, and personal curiosity, how do you structure training? Like how much is it where you're actually on a mountain versus maybe you're doing some aerobic training and lifting weights?
Yeah. Yep. So I do weight training twice a week.
Okay.
Um, and that's because so much of my movement is in the same plane that I need to do strength training to get cross trained into the other planes that I'm not really moving in as often.
Yeah.
So that will be weights or Pilates or different pieces like that. And then my cardio, I live in Park City, so I can ski up the hill when you put little skins on the bottom of your skis. So I'll go backcountry skiing, I'll go hiking. I have a Versa climber. I have like a treadmill that is self-powered that's at an angle. And just depending on what I need that day. Do I want to be outside? Do I want to be inside and efficient because I have a busy day? Like I'll just plug and play the different aerobic activities based on what my schedule is allowing.
Was K2 the hardest for you as of now?
Okay, so K2 is viewed as the hardest, and it is 1,000 times harder than Everest for sure. But my hardest one, I really feel, was either Dik Tau or Mount Tyree. So Mount Tyree's in Antarctica, Dik Tau's in Russia.
Mm.
The unique thing about these climbs is there's not huge teams on the mountains. Nobody has set the ropes. You're tied to your guide and you're inchworming up the mountain together. And if either one of you makes a mistake, you're both at fault for that mistake. Like you're both trying to rescue that mistake and not slide off the mountain or do different things. So when you climb K2 or Everest, you have a rope that you can kind of Jumar in, and that's been set by people, it's checked by people, there's just more eyes on it. When you're on some of these other mountains that are less climbed, are less known, you are climbing with your partner and every step counts, so mentally you just have to be that much more focused on those.
Do you have oxygen on all these climbs?
Nope. Typically you use oxygen around 24,000 feet or higher.
Mm.
Um, and it's actually mainly to keep you warm, not necessarily like oxygenate so that you can perform. Um, the you just need the oxygen molecules to move your blood to keep your body extremities heated and not frozen. But yeah, so only K2 have I used oxygen on for this pursuit, and Everest, but Everest isn't a 7-second summit. It's one of the 7 summits.
I mean, I know clothing and whatnot is so good these days, but like, are you cold at the top of Everest?
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, our gear is amazing and like adrenaline's running through you like a million miles a minute. So, but I mean, it is cold. You're
Yeah.
not at those top moments because you're so cold. And the unique thing is when we were climbing K2, there's actually a lot of people on the mountain this year. You turned your oxygen up when you were standing still because that would help keep you warm. And then when you started moving, you could turn your oxygen down, and because your body would be generating heat as you're going up.
And are you breathing super hard, or are you trying to control your breathing and calm your nervous system down as much as you can? What's that
Yes.
like?
Yeah. So if you've been scuba diving, right, the fun thing about having the oxygen tank on is it's very methodical and almost meditative. You'll have
Mm.
the sound of go, And that sound you just get used to, and it kind of like just you relax into it, and it almost becomes like a rhythm that you move up the mountain on. And I kind of like
Oh, there you go. I mean,
it.
because I
Yeah.
know when I do my breathing exercises before bed, kind of hate it, but it. I mean, it forces me so much to just be present and think about that. But then that shuts my mind off from other things. So in a sense, it's a love hate relationship. Um,
Totally get it.
and then okay, so if K2's coming or Logan's coming up, that's the 7 done.
Yes.
Is there
Yes.
any thought into the next pursuit?
I get asked that question all the time,
Mm,
and I have had so many lessons from this pursuit of pursuing, right? Like
yeah,
what unfolds when you pursue something, that I really want to take time and share those lessons with people. And like I'm writing a book, we're filming a documentary, I do speeches for places. I think now is a time to give back what some of that was and harvest all the lessons from that before I sign up for another excursion. My kids and I do kind of think that maybe finding the nicest beaches in the world, like the
that
7
may be
nicest
nice.
beaches, might be fun. Why not?
Maybe a little warmer as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a little warmer.
What's great is that you're so comfortable getting uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
that's where I think a lot of people they miss in life is they get very mundane in their routine. You know, that they're happy going through their 9 to 5 job and they're just chasing that next promotion. But from what I've learned, what I've gathered, what I've heard is there's no growth in that. You know, it's almost like a stagnation. And so I think what you're doing is a prime example of you're getting uncomfortable and you're going to do things that number one are risky, which you don't have to do something that's risky, but it's doing something that you don't know if you can do. And I
Yeah.
think that's the most important piece of it.
Yeah, no, I do, and I feel we're alive when we're pushing that boundary of who we are and who we define ourselves are. And if we don't keep putting pressure on that to expand, it starts closing in on us
Mm,
and we start being less tolerant of things that
yeah.
maybe before we were tolerant of. So for me, I always I always like to be pushing outwards instead of having the world closing in.
Yeah. And it doesn't require climbing Everest like you've done,
No.
nor does it
No.
require playing a sport professionally. Like, those are two extremes, and that's not the norm. But I think everybody can find something in their life that they appreciate, they value, and they love doing, but it's also not easy doing. I think everybody can find that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got a couple questions from my friends who saw
All
the
right,
post I
perfect.
made of you. This is from my best friend. What are some daily practices you find keep you grounded and fulfilled?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I okay, this is gonna sound really nerdy, but I have my phone, and on my phone, you know how you can set an alarm?
Yep.
And on that alarm, you can actually label it
Okay.
to say different things. And so I'll have an alarm go off at 3 in the afternoon because that's when my kids come home from school.
Okay.
And that alarm goes off and it says best mom ever. And I have to shut that off. And that allows me to step into that persona of being the best mom ever from 3 p.m. on. And I think just do like so I do like I'm an alarm weirdo, but I like to have alarms set off at different times of the day and they just remind me to check in with myself or to show up as this person that's needed in this next environment that I'm going to operate in.
Mm,
And I think having those little gentle reminders to yourself like just help you connect to who you want to be in those moments.
wow. A lot of people talk about balance, and I don't really agree with a lot of what they say about balance, nor do I believe in balance. I think it's all about like prioritizing your time and also prioritizing the things you want to do and prioritizing who you want to be as a person. I think that's a great example of you're prioritizing from 3 p.m. on, it's mom time.
Yep.
And it's not about the balance between being a climber and a mom. It's just where's your head at any given moment, and where are you most, I guess, present is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely. I love
Next
it.
question.
And yes,
Oh, keep
please.
going.
No, 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 you're good.
How do you overcome self doubt?
Oh, I hate self-doubt.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a thing, like always. And it is sneaky. So like I okay, for example. I had to go for a run this morning, and my like doubt was saying, "Oh, it's cold. Oh, you don't need to run. Oh, you're fine." And so I literally am tying my shoes, singing, tying my shoe, going for a run so that I crowd out the voice of doubt. Right? So the best thing you can do is just crowd out the voice of doubt. If it's like trying to peep his head in, you need to block it. And I don't care if it's singing songs or if it's like doing whatever. That's like so much changes so fast. You just have to get through those little moments. And I do it by singing what I'm doing in my head to
Man,
myself.
that's the freaking game. Like the battle in your mind. If you can win that battle, I think you're winning
Yes.
at life. Because every single
Yes.
morning when it's comfortable in bed and you're warm under your covers and the alarm clock goes off, I think you got two options. You either get up and go do what you're going to tell yourself, or you press snooze. And my
I know.
mentor, one of my trainers, he told me, just change the conversation between I am going to work out, or I could work out, or I might work out, to I am going to work out. And that's just a specific example. But I think then you can almost build some sort of like, accountability, and it's like a little contract between you and your mind. And that, if you can start mastering that, I think that's when your life begins to change.
Oh yeah, I have a name in my voice. I call her Resistant Rachel, and Resistant Rachel wants to sabotage me all the time. But I
Mm.
really feel like if you name it, you can tame it. I'm like, oh, that's Rachel being a jackass again. Oops, sorry. Like, go sit in the back seat. Put tape on
Get
your
out of
mouth. We're
here.
going. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
it's
get
like
out
your
of here.
alter ego.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Two more. Here's one. What are you most afraid of in life?
Oh, a lot of things, right? I am probably most afraid of not living. Right? Like not sucking the most out of every day
Yeah.
and getting caught up in my head.
Yeah.
And so I like a lot of times I'll just come back to and anytime I'm in that space, it's because I have somebody else's paradigm that I'm trying to measure myself up against instead of
Mm,
my own. And
mm.
so it's just a check-in for me, but like I can definitely go down the rabbit hole of negativity and frustration and not my best self, and then I'll get mad at myself for spending time in that space. Like it's just silly, but just always trying to check myself and be like, okay, there's that quote out there, right? There's 86,400 minutes in a day or seconds in a day.
Yep.
And if something happens bad to you for 10 seconds, are you going to give all of your seconds away because of that one thing?
Mm,
And they shift it into money. So they'll say,
mm.
like, let's say you have $86,400 in a bank account. If someone robbed $10, are you going to spend $86,390 to get that $10 back? Absolutely not. But we
Yeah,
do that all the time when negative things happen to us, right?
absolutely.
And so when I frame it into something that allows me to be like, oh, hell no, then I can get out of it faster.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, reframing goes back to what we said earlier. Have you gotten
Yes.
better at like comparing your life and yourself to others? Or did you ever struggle with that?
Oh, always. I had like, and the funny thing is like I picked the ideals out of every arena, somehow thinking that I could be all the things instead of like, this is the one arena that I can shine in. Um, and just learning how to accept I'm my own mix of crazy and this is what you get, like right here. That's all.
Do you ever listen to Ed Milet?
I do. I do. I love
Oh,
Ed Milet.
Ed's my favorite, but he talks about envisioning like the person that you want to become. And when I started doing that, it's like, the actions, the behaviors, everything I do day to day had to align to that person that I want to become. If I even want a chance of becoming that Christian Dyer in a few
Yeah.
years. And I think that's a powerful thing to think about, because it's always typically what we become or what we're doing in life rather than the person we are. And I truly believe that's kind of the only thing we can control is who we are, because we can't always control outcomes. We can't always control, for my life, it's what team I'm going to play for. Can I go get this contract in X country? It's about who am I? Am I a good teammate? Am I a good son? Am I a good brother? Like when I reframed it, then I think a lot did change in my life.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When we climb, we have these 8,000-meter suits, right? They're these big, huge, heavy duty suits that anytime you climb an 8,000-meter peak, you wear. And one of the people on our team had a little name tag on it called Snake Bite because one time he was bit by a snake and almost died. And he remembered, like, I need that persona to get up this mountain. So when you think about it, okay, I'm zipping on this super suit and this is what was required of me when I put this suit on. It really helps you show up for the game and desire you want to be.
Very cool. Last question for you, Jen. What's been the proudest moment of your career?
Oh, proudest moment in my career. You know, when I was on K2 and summited that second time, I felt good. But when I saw the person I sponsored summit, like I couldn't hold back the tears
Mm,
because I knew
mm,
how much that meant for that culture, that society, that like just knowing that I had the opportunity to play the smallest little bit in that story was magic. Absolute
that's so
magic.
special. Jen, you're like Superwoman.
We're all superhumans. Come on.
Yeah, but you're like a living. You're the actual Superwoman.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
It's a
That your story's
pursuit. It's a pursuit.
it is a pursuit, and that's why I started the chases. I think everybody has some sort of a chase in their life,
Yes.
and I want your story and my story and every story that I've had on here to hopefully kickstart that chase for whoever's listening.
I agree. It's in us. We're here to do something magic, so step into it and start doing
Amen
it.
to that. Thank you so much for being here, sharing your story, opening up, and just uh, being a light in a lot of people's life.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Very welcome. I can't wait to see you after Mount Logan, and you finish
Woohoo!
that, and you get a Guinness World Record for being the first woman ever to conquer all 7 summits. So, my hats off to you, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, Jen. Take care.
You too.